some of the conversations that surround the Vegas shooting, and we're also going to talk about just false flags in general, right? Because that is a thing. I don't think, I mean, at least if you're part of my support base, you all should know at this point that false flags, they're real. Okay, don't pretend. We can't pretend like they're not real at this point. Um, it's happened. It's been happening. It's really scary. Probably how much it's happened. Compare like how much like it's even to the point where you kind of when you become I guess the term would be woke. When you become super woke, uh, every time a mass shooting happens.
Niko?
Yes.
Yeah, I just noticed a glitch on the board. We're going to have to restart again.
Okay, that's not a problem.
Okay, so I'm going to restart you again.
All right.
Sorry.
It's cool. It's cool. Facebook, we're restarting the show. So if you're just now tuning in, good.
Nobody can hear you just yet. There's a button that got pressed here that shouldn't have been pressed.
That's perfectly fine.
We can restart though. Here we go. I'm going to start the music again.
Awesome. All right. Thank you all for tuning in and welcome to the show. Mikasa Sukasa. I am your host, Niko House, and today we're going to talk about a lot of stuff that happened this week. I wish one day I kind of want to come on to the show and be able to say, what happened in politics this week? Everybody got along. No one yelled any racial slurs. Trump didn't throw paper towels into the crowd and tell Puerto Rico that, they're putting us in a pickle because of their debt. People didn't kill people from balconies. I wish that one day soon that I can come onto the show and say that none of these things happen, throughout the week. But clearly, that is not this is not going to be the week, and it doesn't look like we're going to have one of those weeks anytime soon. I always joke with people and say that, when it comes to journalism, as far as investigative journalism and investigative reporting and reporting on things that aren't necessarily mainstream, I wish that one day I would be out of a job just because things were going so smoothly and that there's nothing really to complain about, but it doesn't look like it's happening anytime soon. And so until that time comes, we will continue to talk about those things. And one of those things is the Las Vegas shooting. Now, as I was talking about earlier with Facebook, by the way, if you all would share this, I would greatly appreciate it. But as I was talking about earlier with Facebook, I want to be able to delve into the details, the nitty gritty of the Vegas shooting. But because of just the type of person I am, I do want to wait until a little bit more comes out. I know a lot of people have been curious though as to what what I feel about the shooting. Do I feel as if it was a false flag? Do I feel like it was legitimate? I'm going to be honest with you, ladies and gentlemen. This is just from I know the details, but I'm not going to it's probably more than one person. I can say that confidently. The fact that it was a multimillionaire, the fact that his obituary was from 3 years ago, that this guy supposedly already died. Just all of that, right? All of that alone is probably suspicious. But let's just talk about the fact that most mass shootings, right? Disgruntled employee, disgruntled friend, show signs of maybe suicidal thoughts or perhaps mental illness. The truth of the matter is, when we see a mass shooting, there's some kind of rhyme, even though it sounds crazy, but there's some rhyme and reason to the shooting. When we looked at Dylan Roof, for example, the Charleston shooter, most of us were like, wow, I'm actually surprised that he didn't kill somebody sooner, because it was very clear. You could see the look in his eyes that this guy was clearly a killer, that there was clearly something wrong with him. With people, when it comes to suicide, for example, you know when your friend has been asking for help. There's clear signs of when someone has been asking for help and they didn't get it. You know when someone's depressed a lot of the times. It's just, you can see it. You can see the events leading up to these type of shootings. Now, sometimes they're racially motivated, like I said, which we saw with Charleston, right? Sometimes it's PTSD, like what was one of the things alleged in the DC sniper, because it was a former military person. And then there's times where it's just, like I said, a disgruntled employee, somebody who's just tired because something in his life, it hasn't been a female, so something in his life was going so wrong that he felt like he needed to let go, and mess stuff up. But in all of those cases, right, they have had some type of consistent history. Even with the Orlando shooter, he was on the FBI watch list. He wasn't even supposed to have a gun. Okay, so there's like consistencies, right, that we can look for and trace back and say, okay, I can clearly see. Maybe not at first, but then you can see how they got to that point. This is a white guy, and apparently he was a liberal. That's what's being alleged at this point. Apparently he was a Hillary Clinton supporter. That's also another thing that's being alleged at this point. I've seen some pictures with him with the hat, the pussy hat, and things like that. But it's weird to me. Okay? White guys don't go shooting up people at country concerts. I don't even know how much more, like, I don't know how to break down that. Like, there's no scenario where you thought, when you heard about a mass shooting in Las Vegas, right? Or if you heard about a mass shooting in New York, or if you thought about a mass shooting in California, you didn't wake up the next day saying, you know what? Damn, I bet it was at that country music concert, and I bet it was by a white guy. A millionaire. A multi-millionaire white guy who literally has everything to lose and absolutely nothing to gain by killing a bunch of random people. A multi-millionaire white guy who actually, there's nothing coming back that's suggesting that perhaps he may have been mentally unstable. There's no criminal history, although I think his brother or his father, was on one of the FBI's most wanted lists at one point in time. There's nothing shady about his background. Like I said, everything to lose, nothing to gain. Young, beautiful wife, Filipina, I believe. You want to say? I want to ask y'all something. How in the hell did he get all of those guns inside of the Mandalay Bay? I mean, the security isn't super stringent, right? And I have to actually look up where he was from. If anybody knows exactly where the killer was from, like where he hailed from, if he was living in Las Vegas, if he flew there, okay? If anybody knows that, please let me know in the comments, because I would really love to know how once again, bro, this man was strapped up like he was going to war. And perhaps he drove. I don't know. I can't really. if he didn't drive, which would be kind of stupid. I mean, think about it, right? Michael Bennett literally was chased down for running. Didn't even have anything on him. That was Michael Bennett, just because he ran after everybody was running. Okay, this guy had to have bags of guns clapping against each other, right? This man was at the perfect angle, at the perfect position. And yeah, it was like shooting crabs in the barrel, as many people have alleged. It was, so that wouldn't take much accuracy. That part would not take much accuracy. But he injured what, 200 plus, killed 50. Have you looked at the room where he killed himself in? Have you seen the shell casings or the lack thereof? That's one thing that kind of made me scratch my head a little bit. Yeah, and it's crazy. You know what's and a lot of people have brought this up, and I've been reading about this a lot, as far as like the multiple shooting claim. And you know what? It's weird to me how in another like the Orlando shooter, for example, he was connected to the FBI watch list. The father is in jail and was on FBI's the current shooter, the Vegas shooter, his father was on the FBI's most wanted list and went to jail. Right? Why is it that these mass shooters keep being are consistently connected to the FBI? And like the other guy, I believe in Orlando, was actually using a legal firearm, and so was this guy. He was using a legal firearm, I think. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure that the issue was that he used a legal firearm, and it, even though it wasn't automatic, it's automatic enough, if you will. But the shell casings from that room were like, it's like they were spread out in the weirdest way. If you've ever shot for those of you who don't know, I'm a veteran, so I've shot a lot of guns. And when you are shooting, his body was like kind of like over there, whatever, when he killed himself. And then the way he's obviously shooting out the window, right? But his if he's shooting out, it depends. So if he was shooting out the window and the rounds are flying out the window, all of the rounds would fly out the window. If that makes, for an AR. If you're shooting out the window, if he's pointing like all the way out the window, all of the rounds will fly out the window. If he's shooting from inside the window, I can maybe see 1 or 2 rounds flying out the window, but they wouldn't be like half of them are spread over here, half of them are spread over here. And like kind of like randomly dispersed all over the room, but like it just I've shot a lot of different guns, AT4s, M16s, M4s, pistols, shotguns, and that's not how shells fall. So I can actually confidently say that. But probably even weirder is the fact that you're like, no, look, he really did kill himself. Look at the picture. Who really believes that the Las Vegas police, like, think about it like this. Once again, Michael Bennett, we haven't even seen the entire film of the Michael Bennett situation. They turned off a body cam and he turned off obviously, clearly the cop with the Michael Bennett case turned off the body cam. But there's multiple cameras all over Vegas where we could have seen exactly what happened before, during, and after, and not really had almost any interruption in filming. But the cops probably know already that if they show the entire thing, that it'll probably prove his point correct, that he was being singled out for some reason or another, which he clearly was, and it wasn't because he was fucking running. But So even with that, they are holding that type of material so that we couldn't see it. Now, you think that a cop is going to because the cops were investigating this. So you really believe that the cop was going to let people walk into an open crime scene and just take random pictures of a dead guy and then post them on the internet? If it was like a reporter who came perhaps after the scene had been, considered a crime scene, they taped it off, they talked about it, they moved the body, whatever, then perhaps at that point I could be a little bit less skeptical. But now I was actually kind of like, man, I don't know, man. If this guy was kind of crazy, then it's kind of believable, etc. And what do you know? All of a sudden, there's some photos posted when you start doubting, because the false flag conversation, which was crazy to me. The false flag conversation not only left the independent media, but the false flag conversation then creeped in to the mainstream media, which of course at that point they had to start doubling back a little bit and saying, okay, well, if this is getting into the mainstream media, I want to read to you some of the article from that. Give me a second. I want to read to you all some of the article, and this is from yahoo.com. Boy, when I saw that, I was like, oh my goodness. It just got a little real here. So this is the first part of the article. As mass shootings have become almost routine in America, at least 1,518 shootings have taken place since 2012 Sandy Hook massacre. So to have the details that have typically emerged about the shooters themselves, the hours after these heinous attacks, he kept to himself. A coworker will say. The perpetrator is almost always a he. Didn't talk much. Others will add, troubled, angry, political, ideological, bigoted, even mentally ill. So things that I was talking about in the beginning of the show. There's always like a tell that you knew that this person was probably, even though you would hope that he wouldn't commit a mass murder, you wouldn't be surprised if they said his name or if you saw him on the news the next day. The strange and scary thing about the multi-millionaire real estate investor, Stephen Craig Paddock, the 64-year-old Nevada resident who secretly hauled 10 or more rifles to the 32nd floor of the Mandalay Bay Resort in Las Vegas on Sunday before opening fire on concert goers below, killing at least 58 and injuring more than 489 people. Ladies and gentlemen, killing 58, injuring 489 people. I don't think you have to be a mathematician to realize that's a lot of bullets for an AR. That's a lot of bullets. And cause it's not, like I said, it's not, yeah, he killed 52 and that's believable. And if he injured like 100, that's believable. Even maybe 150. Like going through, and I'm talking about he's pulling off and just rapid firing and hoping that he hits people. 489 is crazy. Because that's not even a guarantee that you're hitting people. Okay? So, anyway. So it says it's a mass killer's biography usually helps explain his actions. So once again, what I was explaining to you all earlier, offering hope that the next shooter can somehow be stopped. But so far, the man behind the deadliest mass shooting in modern U.S. history is too much of an enigma to provide even the coldest of comforts. We have no idea how or why this happened, Paddock's brother said. He told ABC News this, adding that there is no reason for this, that there were no secrets in his past, talking about the brother. As they drill into his life, there will be nothing to be found, Paddock concluded. We don't understand. ISIS released a statement claiming, the attack, whatever, because they always do that. And then, it'd be funny about that. I mean, first of all, if you don't know this by now, ISIS is a construct of the U.S. government. If you really want to know, this is a good test, and it's a good little segue. This is a good test of whether or not you want to know if a terrorist organization is legitimately being funded or supported in more than one way, whether it be by money, weapons, or organization. Have they attacked Israel? Have they attacked Saudi Arabia? Have they attacked Qatar? Usually the answer is check no, check no, check no. ISIS is literally all three of those. They've never attacked Israel. They've never attacked Qatar. They've never attacked Saudi Arabia. How weirdly convenient, considering that, ISIS is supposed to be like this Muslim brotherhood. Just they hate everybody, Christian and Jew. So why haven't they attacked Israel? If they're all over Syria for some reason, all over in Iraq for some reason, Afghanistan for some reason, but they can't find their way to Saudi Arabia. They can't find their way to ISIS. You would figure, because this is what doesn't make sense, because terrorism, there's a little segue once again, but terrorism works in such that the more you destabilize a region, the more you piss people off, I guess would be the best thing to say. The more you piss people off, it's used as a recruiting tool. It's used as propaganda. And it's pretty successful. That's how Hezbollah recruits, and it's worked out pretty well for them thus far. That's how Al-Qaeda recruited. Al-Qaeda, by the way, never committed a terrorist attack in Saudi Arabia. That's just how it's always been done. That's how it always has been done. You use the propaganda, you use people's fears, and you turn it against them. So if you were, for example, ISIS, the most dangerous terrorist group in the world, who supposedly just wants to see us fall, you want to see the U.S. fall. So why not use the fact that Palestinians have been having their lands taken, been abused, been misused, mistreated, every name under the sun by the Israeli government, and why don't you recruit people from ISIS into Israel, or recruit them into ISIS, from Palestine, and then attack Israel? Why didn't that happen? Why hasn't that happened? If you're ISIS at this point, that Israel is key to the success of the United States in the Middle East. We're really the success of the entire West in the Middle East with their intel. It's kind of weird, right? You would think that would be a done deal, that ISIS would already be in Israel. But all they talk about is Hezbollah and I know I'm missing one. But essentially, because that's how their propaganda works. Israel's propaganda is make them hate anybody who is Palestinian, or Palestinians don't know how to govern themselves, so we have to do it for them. So that's how their propaganda works. But if they've never attacked Qatar, if they've never attacked Saudi Arabia, I'm talking about the Middle East, by the way. And if they've never, because they found their way, like I said, they found their way to attack Iraq, they found a way to attack Afghanistan, they found a way to attack Syria, they found a way into Yemen, they found a way into all these countries, 7 of them to be exact, that the United States has we've already figured out that they're trying to destabilize. So why not Saudi Arabia, Israel, and Qatar? Pretty sure we already know the answer to that. Okay? So, I bring up that point specifically to say there are patterns that are established when we see behavior like this. And when something becomes out of the norm, all of a sudden, you kind of have to take a step back and then say, wait a damn minute. Because there are false flags that actually do make sense in a lot of ways. Like the Orlando, which I still think is a false flag, to be totally honest. The Orlando situation, okay, he was on the FBI's watch list. he was apparently used to be a homophobe, and he was Muslim. And then like I guess he had come out, but he didn't. It was a whole like mental illness background with him, and so that you can rationalize that, but really the reason why I think personally that this is a false flag is because of just the sloppiness on it. It's like it just doesn't make any sense, y'all. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And it's so crazy. It's always, and this is the second time we've seen this, right? It's second time we've seen this. When it's Trump, the first guy who shot Scalise, all of a sudden, oh, that guy was a Bernie supporter, that liberal guy trying to kill the conservative. Not Scalia. I said Scalia. Oh, what's the guy's name? Don't hold me to that. That guy, you know who I'm talking about. The first shooting in D.C. during the softball game. I can't remember the guy who got shot, but he was a senator or a representative. But so he gets shot, right? Then, and all of a sudden, all these pictures of him being a Bernie supporter, and it was like all Bernie Sanders on his page, right? All that comes out. Then this guy, he goes on a shooting spree, and then all of a sudden, mind you, in the midst of Puerto Rico, in the midst of this hurricane craziness, bills getting passed, net neutrality getting discussed right now, the Congress just passed a legislation eliminating 20-week abortions with damn near no exceptions. All of this stuff happening. And then, of course, oh, look, it's another liberal. Because obviously, as you've noticed, the conversation about liberals has changed a little bit. Now we're the violent ones. We're the thugs, if you will. We're the problem, and we're behaving violently, and that's why Trump should fear for his life. And they always they are trying to convince when the perpetrators start pretending to be the victims, like that sociopath who gets caught up in their lie, and so they start making it all about them, and that you are the one in the wrong, and that they're nowhere near. That's like kind of like what we're experiencing. So it's all liberals' fault, progressive and otherwise, because they already got one. He was a Bernie supporter, right? Now this guy, all of a sudden, pictures of him in pussy hats. And I want to tell you something else. So during the Obama administration, right, we had the situation that happened in California. Supposedly that was ISIS, and all they ever talked about was how Obama wasn't doing a good enough job on ISIS. And God, I'm like talking about this, but the three Muslims, 2 hijabi women, and then Dia, it was Dia, Razan, and Noir. Don't quote me on that. I didn't know Noir well, but I did know Dia, and I did know Razan. But when they were killed in North Carolina and Chapel Hill, and then it's just crazy to me. And same thing with Dylan Roof. Race relations at an all-time high. The situation with Baltimore happens. Everything's going, and then this guy walks in and massacres a black church. And then it's treated like royalty after he gets caught. Like I said, all these ISIS attacks and just crazy stuff that happened. And it was like the things that really people said that Obama was weak on, and they were the main topics of discussion really around that presidency. Gun control was a huge topic. ISIS was a huge topic. Race relations were a huge topic. So yeah, race relations are a huge topic now, but gun control is actually in the process of being debated, or there's actually about to be a bill voted on for gun control. And then on top of that, thank you. Somebody told me Scalise. Stephen Scalise was the legislator who got shot in DC. But thank you very much for that, Magic Sister, from YouTube. But the conversation surrounding Trump's presidency obviously raises a topic, but not in the same way as it was with Obama. It's a different type of racism. But the fear of the old white liberal guy is kind of like the topic, one of the main comments, because of Bernie Sanders, for one. That's like a thing, right? That's the Bernie bro, the old Bernie guys. Like they want to run politics. They feel like they have, it's like a stigma around being old and white and being a male now, in the liberal world. And so that's the conversation that's being had. And then on top of that, people viewing conservatives on the liberal side, people viewing conservatives as animals who are, all of them are just trying to end the world, don't care about anybody else. And so it's feeding into that narrative. So once again, we have another mass killing that is feeding into the narrative, one of the key narratives surrounding this president. And after a while, you got to start getting suspicious. And I want to read to you all something. For those of you who just for some reason don't believe in false flags. Like I said, if you're watching my show, I hope you're not one of those people, because if you watch my show consistently, you would know. You should know. I want to read you something. First of all, if you don't know about the false flag that was going to be attempted by the U.S. government during the Kennedy era, I suggest you research it. You get a lot of insight there. Operation Norwood, I believe is what it was called. I want to read to you an excerpt from, let me see. I'm gonna try to find what the newspaper was, but I want to read this to you. The CIA has at various times owned or subsidized more than 50 newspapers, news services, radio stations, periodicals, and other communication entities, sometimes in this country, but mostly overseas. They were used as vehicles for the extensive propaganda efforts as cover for its operatives, or both. Another dozen foreign-based news organizations, while not financed by the CIA, were infiltrated by paid CIA agents. Nearly a dozen Americans publishing houses, including some of the most prominent names in the industry, have printed at least a score of more than 250 English language books financed or produced by the CIA since the early 1950s, ladies and gentlemen. In many cases, without being aware of the agency's involvement. So there are people, who did that sound like? The New York Times? 17 intelligence agencies all of a sudden, and then they had to retract the article. The inquiry by the Times unearthed yet another occasion in which the CIA interfered with the newspaper reporting. In 1954, Alan Dulles, then the chief of the CIA, told a Times executive that he did not believe that Sidney Grusin, the newspaper's correspondent in Mexico, was capable of reporting with objectivity on the impending revolution in Guatemala. Mr. Dulles told the Times that his brother John Foster Dulles, then Secretary of State, shared his concern, and he asked the newspaper to keep Mr. Grusin, whom the agency believed to have liberal leanings, interesting, away from the story. So they purposely pulled someone so that the world wouldn't know what we were doing in Guatemala and Mexico. It did not become well known until several years after the overthrow of Colonel Jacobo Arbenz Guzman, the leftist Guatemalan leader, that the CIA had played a central role in fostering the revolution that led to his downfall. There is some evidence in agency files that the CIA feared that Mr. Grusin's report was edging toward premature discovery in its role. Mr. Grusin, now an executive vice president of the Times, said that the interview that he had learned after that, Mr. Grusin, now an executive vice president of the Times, said in an interview that he had learned later that Arthur Hayes Sulzberger, then newspaper publisher, had complied with the CIA's wishes by contriving to keep him in Mexico City away from Guatemala during the revolution on the pretense he had received a big tip that the fighting might spill across the border into Mexico. The CIA is literally, not just the CIA, understand something. Our government is literally telling us who and who isn't on the winning side of history, who and who isn't on the right side of history, who and who isn't the person we should be hating, who and who isn't the person we shouldn't be hating. They're the ones telling us that Russia is interfering with our elections, any more than they have in the past. I'm not saying that they haven't, because that's stupid. Every superpower interferes with other superpowers' elections, every one of them. But they're the ones who are ignoring the fact that Israel, they literally turn the other cheek when it comes to Israel right now. They turn the other cheek when it comes to Saudi Arabia right now, Qatar right now. The wrongdoings there. I mean, are we really going to believe that if they would think about it like this, right? If they would conduct a fake coup over an entire country or an entire government, like what we saw in Venezuela, Chad, Libya, Syria, Iraq, they tried it once with Kim Jong-il. They tried it in Vietnam. I mean, it's time again. If they would conduct fake coups that led to the deaths of hundreds of people, what makes you think that they are incapable of killing Americans? What makes you think that they are incapable of putting us in harm's way? What makes you think that they are incapable of pulling the right strings at the right time to ensure that? And it's crazy because when you hear that story, when you hear about what happened in Guatemala with the CIA, then you had to start thinking, well, shit, no wonder all this information kind of came out. No wonder, the situation. Hillary, at this point, especially if she's friends with the Bushes, even Obama, Bill Clinton, everybody, all the presidents of the past, in their minds, the CIA has been able to control the narrative forever. We own every news publication. We own The Hill. We own Washington Post. We own the overseas news publications. We own the people who run these publications. We own the people who run CNN. We own the people who run everything. So how? They're never going to find out because we own the executives. We're the ones who gave them their jobs. They never thought that the truth would come out about what happened with them in Russia or lack thereof. They never thought, for some reason, that it would eventually be figured out that the president of CrowdStrike, which is the cybersecurity company that the DNC hired after they got hacked, literally worked for Robert Mueller. He was the second in command when Robert Mueller was the director of the CIA. He's friends with Mueller and he's friends with Comey. But what they weren't expecting is for Facebook to become a political juggernaut, which I hate Facebook, but I love it at the same time because of what it has allowed us to do thus far. They weren't expecting people to dig deeper. They weren't expecting people to care. They weren't expecting anyone to develop this really combined consciousness where there used to be this kind of norm, right? There's a set of norms that everybody believes, and this is truth. Before Like I'm younger, so I'm 28 years old. So before this election, before this started, right? Obama was the best president in history. Obama was great. Bill Clinton, quote unquote, the first black president, ordained as the first black president. Hillary was a shoo-in. Hillary's great. Bill Clinton's great. Obama's great. Bush is horrible and is the worst president ever. Hell, Jeb Bush is way worse than Hillary. I would definitely take Hillary over Jeb Bush, which right now I'm not so sure about. Bernie Sanders was if we didn't have the collective conscious and ability to reach out to each other and figure out the truth, we probably would have thought that Bernie Sanders really lost, because that's what they told us. They told us from the very beginning, yeah, Bernie lost. Bernie lost. He's out. He's over. But we could keep up. We could talk. Then they started doing things like removing exit polling. And after they removed the exit polling, that was it for me. I knew what time it was. I knew he already won. That removing exit polling, I'm trying to figure out a good example. Removing exit polling is like you're playing a game of basketball and you're both keeping up with the score, but the other, it's like you're beating them so bad. You're both keeping up with the score, and the other teams are screaming out the wrong score. And you're like, hold up, it's not 20-15. And then instead of addressing the fact that it wasn't 20-15, they just ripped down the scoreboard off the Jugatron or the Jumbotron and was like, yes, it is. And you're like, no, it's 22-20. It said it right there. No, it didn't. Bro, you can't tell me that I didn't see that on the Jumbotron. No, you didn't. The Jumbotron was never there. So you trying to tell me that I just abandoned that big ass Jumbotron? 'Cause that's what they try to tell us about the exit polling. All of a sudden, exit polling wasn't important, which is weird, because according to the law, if the exit polling is off by 2% or more, that is election fraud, and it is supposed to be investigated, and the election itself for that state is supposed to be suspended. So all of a sudden, they took our Jumbotron down and thought that nobody would notice. But we only noticed to the degree that we did, and that everybody knew, because of the collective conscious that we've developed. So the paradigm has kind of shifted. The norms that we thought were norms are way out of the norm. Like, if you think that, if somebody came to me, I still think Hillary would be better than Trump, come talk to me for a second. We need to have a conversation. Did you read this? No. Did you read this? No. And then there's like 2 or 3 articles, really, that you could point to somebody who is kind of like just a casual observer, and they will never look at anything the same again. I know this because in my office, best believe everybody I work with is woke. Every day I'm talking to them about something that's happening in politics. I try. It's important to have these conversations in the workplace. And people are like, you shouldn't talk politics in the workplace. Damn that. I need to know exactly. Because if you're walking around saying that women shouldn't have, the right to choose whether or not, they have an abortion or not, or that the government should be the person to choose for a woman, I could probably draw a lot of assumptions about you. You shouldn't do that, by the way, but be aware of your environment. But I could probably draw a lot of assumptions about you, right? You're probably sexist a little bit. All of a sudden, I bet all the women in the office make less than everybody else, which I actually found out, and that was true. Every time, like if there was a situation where a woman, it's the same people who believe this, they found out a woman asked to get a raise, and they laughed at her in her face, but then asked her to try to go out and party with them. That type of stuff. So I can figure out a lot about it. But same thing. I had these conversations. And when we have situations that develop into what we've seen with this Las Vegas shooting, all of a sudden, we all start knowing what to look for. Right? We've seen this story before. We saw Dylan Roof, we saw a compound shooting, we saw the airport shooting, we saw the movie theater shooting, we saw the terrorist attacks, the supposedly religiously driven terrorist attacks. And we know that they all have some things in common, some things that are predictable. So when things like this happen, things like the Orlando shooting happen, Because then the suspicious attacks start to be, you can start, piecing things together. All the suspicious attacks start having things in common too. Like being on the FBI's most wanted list, right? Like, wow, this person was a trained killer. That's very coincidental that he was a trained killer and went into this building and did all those things. Because oftentimes we tend to find out that in mass shootings, people aren't trained killers, but they're lone gunmen. They may shoot in the range. They can learn how to use their weapon, but oftentimes the weapons don't even belong to the killer, right? We've seen that happen more often than not. They get it from someone else because they were never killers. They were never shooters. They were just kind of crazy. But very, 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 very rarely do you find a trained killer. The DC sniper was prior service. The Orlando shooter was, if he wasn't prior service, he was a contractor, and he was a trained killer also. This guy, I mean, obviously he liked guns, but sweet Jesus. And his dad ended up like I said, his dad was in jail on the FBI's most wanted list. It's a little weird. The girlfriend was sent to the Philippines just before everything happened. A lot of questions for her to ask. Still waiting to see the guy. I mean, yeah, we saw him dead. Yeah, we saw the hole in his head. Yeah, but what does that mean now, man? Have you seen graphics? Have you seen some of these movies? Have you watched any of the recent Avengers movies? Man, the bodies look so real. Okay, so the moral of the story is question everything. Okay, seriously. Now, before we get to the end of our show, this is kind of along the lines of the false flags and fraud and all the types of behavior we see by the establishment. The DNC fraud protest is going to be on November the 12th. Please go. It's going to be in DC on November the 12th. Go. However you have to get there. The protest against the inauguration, very, very important. Okay? It was. Mostly not because it was against Trump, but because we know who should have been president, right? The reason that the Women's March was so well organized is because it was co-opted. But even there was some important aspects of that as well. But this DNC fraud affects everybody, ladies and gentlemen. The fact, I mean, the lawsuit is still on, so there is going to be an appeal process. But we have to go to Washington to show that we have not forgotten what they've done, that they're not going to be able to wake up one day and think that this is going to blow over, because it is not. If you can go to Facebook and click on the link, just go type in DNC fraud protest and the dates and all that good stuff will come up. But you all need to go, everybody. And this is not just for progressives or liberals, conservatives too, because this affects you all. If the DNC outright admits that they can legally defraud their constituents, how long do you think it's going to be before you all get defrauded? In fact, it's probably already happened numerous times. This is a fight for the soul of our nation. This is a protest for the soul of our nation. And it will really be a determining factor on which direction this country is going. November the 12th, I'm going to be speaking. Tim Black's going to be speaking. I think Jimmy Dore is going to be speaking. Lee Camp is supposed to speak. We have a few people. We have a few people speaking, but most importantly, like, it's cool that we're speaking, but it's really more so important that you all go. Because, like I said, it's all good that we're upset. It's all good to be angry, but the next step is, it's very, 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 very easy to talk about the problem, but the next step is action and awareness. And the DNC fraud protest creates action and awareness. And then, of course, the most important part, which is really networking with other people that you probably otherwise wouldn't have met, or, meeting people that you love on Facebook, right? Facebook and Twitter. But you never had a chance to meet them before. And so it's good it's a good opportunity to meet people, other progressives, and people who feel the same way about you. But like I said, at the same time, it's just very, very important that you all go. And so spread that message. Like I said, go to the DNC fraud protest page on Facebook and make sure you share. Thank you, Sarah Fields, for hosting this event and creating this event. Let me see. I'm gonna actually try to figure out right now how many people are RSVP'd for it. If you went to the Philly protest against the DNC, you should be at this event. Okay. Let me see. Boom, boom, boom. What is going on? Sorry, y'all. My computer's acting crazy. But anyway, so there's about 1.7 thousand people. 1.7 thousand people talking about going. But we need more. This should be, like I said, bigger than Chris Sobieski said that we should make a side trip to the CIA. I don't know about that, man. I think that you might have to make that trip by yourself. I don't need them to get any pictures of me. I don't need them. Obviously Niko's a terrorist because you see his face at the CIA. He was plotting. I don't need none of that. None of that, sir. So yeah. But let me know how it goes, Chris. Let me know how it goes. Maybe we can talk about it afterwards. But I ain't gonna be there. You can get there though. I ain't gonna be there. But other than that, thank you all so much for watching. If anybody has any questions for me, we got like 2 minutes left in the show. We'll be happy to answer anything from either Facebook or YouTube. So if you have any questions, let me know. But I guess the last question that probably, because some people have been asking me that, is whether or not I believe that it was a false flag, and I'm not going to tell you. But I will tell you this. Would I be surprised if it was a false flag? Hell no. It's what the government does, ladies and gentlemen. It's what the government does. So don't be surprised at all if it actually is a false flag. Keep reviewing the details. If you have my Twitter, it's going to be at Niko CSFB. So CS as in snake, FB. And then on my Facebook, you can go to Niko D House. And my email is nikoforthepeople@gmail.com. So feel free at any point to email any information you may have found that you think may be pertinent. Feel free, even if you want to reach out. People will tell you I'm pretty good, even though I'm it's been a crazy week, couple of weeks really, because of the hurricane and trying to catch back up with work and politics and all that good stuff. I've been a little slower responding than usual, but I try to talk to people as much as I can via messages and things like that. So yeah, go to Facebook, go to Twitter. Glenn said that false flags keep the FBI in business. Yeah, actually, that's a thing. That's actually real. There's either a documentary or a document that came out. I was reading about it earlier today that said literally the FBI orchestrates controlled false flags and controlled terrorist attacks, because otherwise the actual terrorist attacks would show how ridiculously incompetent the FBI actually is. And it's funny because I believe that, because think about it like this. If police officers are this incompetent, right? Police officers, obviously, for the most part, most of them are incompetent. How much of a step up do you think the FBI actually is? Some of the worst people in the world become police chiefs and police colonels. Some of the stupidest people in the world get to the highest ranks of policing. You know how they get there? It ain't because they do the right thing. It's not because they're smarter than everyone else. It's because they know when to shut up. They know when to bend over. You know? So, in FBI, how do you think they get to the top? They know when to shut up. They know when to bend over. So, with that being said, thank you all so much for watching this evening. It's been an absolute pleasure. We're definitely going to see a lot more of me this weekend, especially as this false flag, situation develops. But always remember, ladies and gentlemen, find your balance. Peace.